Have you ever been caught in the midst of a storm that no one else can perceive? It's as if you're trying to explain something invisible, battling forces that only you perceive, while others doubt the existence of even a breeze. Perhaps you have come to question your sanity, wondering if it is all just imagination or exaggeration on your part. But what if I told you that this feeling, this cruel self-doubt, is precisely what someone wants you to feel? What is the source of this overwhelming confusion that disrupts your thoughts and disconnects your emotions? It arises from the calculated silence, the ambiguous words, and the subtle lies that one carefully plants in their minds. This is how a narcissist acts, not with obvious violence, but with an almost perfect strategy of emotional manipulation. Every word, every seemingly innocent gesture hides a trap designed to keep him trapped in a labyrinth of uncertainty. And the more you try to escape, the more entangled you get. Maybe at first you felt special, like you were in front of someone who finally recognized your worth. Gradually, however, she realized that each compliment was accompanied by veiled criticism, each demonstration of affection followed by an inexplicable rejection. Slowly, her confidence gave way to doubt, her clarity became a lingering haze, and her joy a distant longing. The narcissist's emotional manipulation is precisely that. An invisible storm, carefully constructed so that you never find your way out. Perhaps the most painful thing is realizing that others don't see your storm. After all, how can you explain something that does not leave physical marks? How can we depict pain that doesn't manifest as visible bleeding? They lead you to believe that you are alone, trapped in a reality that no one comprehends. Psychological manipulation is effective because it is silent, secretive, and for a long time, it manages to remain hidden under a mask of innocence. However, it is real, and its effects are devastating. But here's the truth you need to hear today. You're not crazy, nor are you exaggerating. The suffering you feel is authentic, and that emotional storm you face is real. God sees every silent tear you shed and every anguished night you go through. The emotional darkness that the narcissist has tried to impose on you does not go unnoticed by the one who knows the hidden truth of the human heart. You are not alone in this struggle, even when everything indicates otherwise. God is about to light this invisible storm and reveal to the whole world the cruel game that has been played on you. This moment is just the beginning of the end of the emotional dominance that the narcissist thinks he has. Not only will the divine power set you free, but you will also bear witness to the ultimate end of the confusion that has robbed you of so much peace. Be ready, for the justice you long for is on its way. Before we continue, write in the comments, "God sees the invisible storm I face." Share this message to reach more people and subscribe to the channel to receive more inspiring reflections. The emotional manipulation strategies used by a narcissist are often difficult to perceive clearly. They operate discreetly, exploiting internal doubts, personal insecurities, and the victim's emotional confidence. Among the most common and destructive techniques is gaslighting, a subtle form of manipulation in which the abuser makes the victim question their perception of reality. The narcissist may categorically state that something never happened, that certain words were never spoken, or that the victim is exaggerating even in the face of clear facts. Over time, this technique destroys a person's self-confidence, leaving them constantly insecure and emotionally dependent. Another frequently used resource is the deliberate distortion of reality. The narcissist transforms routine situations into confusing scenarios, always reinterpreting events in his favor. For example, a sincere compliment can be converted into a veiled criticism, causing discomfort and confusion. A simple request can turn into a heavy emotional charge. These small details emotionally wear out the victims, causing them to gradually doubt their judgment. Projected guilt also plays a central role in this abusive cycle. the manipulator transfers to the victim the responsibility for his mistakes and failures, positioning himself as innocent in all situations. Phrases like, "If you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have acted this way," or "Look how you force me to react," are classic ways of projecting guilt, leaving the victim emotionally overwhelmed and believing themselves to be the real cause of the relationship's problems. These manipulation tactics are effective because they create a powerful emotional dependency. Victims remain emotionally trapped, not just by the manipulation itself, but by the constant hope of gaining the narcissist's affection or approval. This emotional game alternates phases of intense affection with cold and distant periods, creating a psychological roller coaster that makes it difficult to break up definitively. The victim deeply believes that she can regain that brief moment of initial affection, keeping herself trapped in the abusive cycle. Another reason for the difficulty in getting out of this dynamic is isolation. The narcissist often projects a charming and generous image to people outside the relationship, making it nearly impossible for friends or family to notice what is really going on in private. This contrast between the public image and the private reality leaves the victim even more helpless, feeling completely alone and unable to ask for help. In the face of these situations that seem silent and hidden, an important question arises. Does God really see these psychological games? Does he intervene in cases where emotional abuse leaves no visible marks? The truth is that God has a clear view of all the inner workings of the human soul. He knows every detail of the hidden manipulations, every strategy employed to weaken the victims emotionally. For God, nothing remains hidden. He observes not only apparent suffering, but also hidden pain, the one that many have difficulty believing or understanding. God intervenes precisely because his justice does not tolerate lying and manipulation that thrive indefinitely. Although it may seem silent, the divine action happens in a decisive and restorative way, clearly revealing the hidden intentions of the abuser. God's intervention occurs not only to free victims from emotional oppression, but also to restore the inner peace that has been stolen from them. Therefore, even though the narcissist's emotional games seem invincible and hidden, God has already prepared the exact moment when the manipulation will be unmasked. The viewer will be a direct witness to this powerful moment in which God puts an end to the secret cycle that for so long kept the victim silent. God is not indifferent to the suffering caused by emotional manipulation. While it may appear that these strategies remain unnoticed, the truth is that he perceives clearly what human eyes fail to see. The lies, distortions, and manipulations used by the narcissist do not escape divine justice, and there is a clear purpose for God's intervention in these cases. Emotional manipulation is not just a psychological issue, it directly reaches the spiritual plane. When a person is led to doubt their sanity, question their perception of reality, and feel trapped by guilt or insecurity, they find themselves under attack that goes beyond emotions. This kind of manipulation is a distortion of the truth, and God is a tireless defender of it. C.S. Lewis, when reflecting on the struggle between good and evil, emphasized that truth is essential for the spiritual freedom of the human being. In his work Mere Christianity, he points out that deception is one of the enemy's main tools to trap people in cycles of suffering. When a lie is repeated over and over again, it seeps into the mind and robs the victim not only of their peace, but also of their identity and purpose. God intervenes because his nature is inseparable from truth. He does not allow confusion and manipulation to have the final word in the lives of his children. Emotional manipulation, by distorting reality, attempts to obfuscate what God has revealed about each person's worth, dignity, and purpose. When a victim begins to believe that he or she is worthless, unworthy, or guilty for everything that happens, that lie clashes directly with the truth that God has established, that every life is precious, loved, and destined to live in emotional and spiritual freedom. God also intervenes for the sake of justice. Abusive trust underpins narcissistic manipulation, distorting people's good faith and vulnerability for control. Such conduct violates God's principles of love and honesty. In The Problem of Suffering, C.S. Lewis points out that unjust suffering is not invisible to God. He moves with compassion and acts to restore order where there is injustice. But divine intervention is not only a response to injustice, it is also an act of love. When God decides to act, He not only exposes the lies and breaks the cycle of manipulation, He also works to restore emotional and spiritual identity that has been damaged throughout the process. God doesn't just intervene to end the narcissist's control, but to rebuild the victim's trust, peace, and emotional security. This divine intervention can occur in different ways. Occasionally, it manifests itself through circumstances that clearly reveal the narcissist's lies. At other times, God emotionally strengthens the victim, bringing clarity so that he perceives the manipulations that once seemed confusing. This revelation is not only an act of justice, but also a powerful way to give the victim back control over their mind and emotions. God knows every detail of manipulative strategies, and He acts at the right time to expose these lies and protect those who trust Him. God's purpose is not only to end the cycle of manipulation, but to fully restore the person who has suffered this abuse. This restoration involves regaining self-confidence, inner peace, and the ability to relate to others without fear or distrust. When God intervenes, He not only reveals what was hidden, but He empowers the victim with a firm conviction that he is not what the narcissist tried to make him believe. What God reveals is the truth that has always existed, that each person was created in His image with unwavering worth, purpose, and dignity. This powerful action is the divine response to the narcissist's mind game. When God exposes the lies and brings light to the emotional darkness that enveloped the victim, He doesn't just put an end to the manipulation. He restores the peace and freedom that had been stolen. And when this intervention happens, there is an inevitable question. How exactly does God act to unmask the narcissist and restore the victim? This response reveals the moment when manipulation loses control and divine justice manifests itself in full force. Carefully constructed, the narcissist's emotional manipulation envelops the victim in confusion and uncertainty like an invisible web. For a long time, this web of lies can seem impenetrable, and the victim, no matter how hard he tries, cannot see a way out. However, there comes a pivotal moment when God steps in and unveils the hidden truth. This intervention unmasks the narcissist and gives the victims back something even more valuable: spiritual clarity and inner peace. Divine intervention often happens unexpectedly. It can arise through seemingly ordinary conversation, where a specific word makes something click in the victim's mind. Other times, it arises when a carefully planned lie by the narcissist is exposed by chance, a discovered message, an obvious contradiction, or even a mistake that reveals his true intent. What appeared imperceptible suddenly becomes evident. This revelation is not just a moment of exposure, but a profound release. It is as if, after so long in the midst of the emotional fog, a strong wind blew and drove away all the accumulated confusion. The victim finally understands that she was not exaggerating, that she was not to blame for everything that happened, and that the insecurity she felt was not the result of a fragile mind, but rather the result of calculated manipulation. This instance is powerful because it reveals two truths at once: the narcissist's carefully constructed lie and the victim's restored identity. God doesn't just expose manipulation. He restores to the victim the trust that has been eroded over months or years of emotional abuse. This spiritual clarity is more than an intellectual revelation. It is a liberating experience that brings peace to the heart and strength to move forward. CES. Lewis described this type of divine intervention as the arrival of light that pierces the darkness. For him, God's truth reveals what is false and brings with it an understanding that transforms the lives of those who receive it. This spiritual clarity allows the victim to finally see the manipulations for what they really are: desperate attempts at emotional control that were never based on truth. Many victims, after this divine intervention, report feeling as if they are waking up from a nightmare. What once seemed confusing is now clearly understood. Words that once caused pain lose their power to hurt, and the person is finally able to distinguish what is true from what has been manipulated. This experience is liberating because it does not depend on external explanations or justifications. It is a powerful inner conviction brought about by God's direct action. Divine intervention also strengthens the victim spiritually. From a new perspective, the victim realizes that the narcissist's manipulation was no more powerful than God's justice. This perception transforms the way a person sees their own life and his faith. The feeling of helplessness is replaced by a renewed trust in divine protection, and insecurity gives way to the certainty that God has never abandoned the one who cried out for help, even if that help seemed delayed. This moment of deliverance is not only a personal victory, it is also a powerful lesson in how God acts at the right time. That ends the manipulative cycle and shows that the truth always wins, no matter how distorted. This spiritual clarity exposes the narcissist and emotionally strengthens the victim so that they do not fall back into the traps of manipulation. By witnessing this transformative moment, the perception of divine justice changes forever. The victim understands that God not only saw the hidden suffering that so many ignored, but that he also acted precisely to reveal the truth and restore that which had been stolen. This understanding brings a peace that no manipulator can destroy, a firm conviction that when God chooses to act, no lie can remain hidden. Seeing divine justice manifest before your eyes is an experience that marks the soul deeply. When you witness the narcissist's manipulation being exposed and undone, it's not just emotional relief, it's a powerful confirmation that God has always been there, even when all seemed lost. Maybe you've spent months or even years wondering if anyone would ever see what you were facing. The narcissist's words were calculated to leave him isolated, and the sense of injustice seemed suffocating. However, unexpectedly, the truth emerged. The manipulation, which seemed unbreakable, crumbled before his eyes. You have clearly seen how God has exposed what was previously hidden, and this revelation has changed the way you view not only the narcissist, but also God's action in your life. This moment is transformative because it's not just the downfall of the manipulator, it's the confirmation that God has heard each of your silent prayers, the ones you've prayed in the darkest of times. You realize that even when you felt alone and forgotten, He was acting behind the scenes, preparing the exact moment to reveal the truth. This realization generates a deep emotion, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and reverence at divine wisdom. Witnessing this intervention leaves a lasting impression. Seeing God undo the lies and confusion that the narcissist has built generates a powerful spiritual impact. That cycle of doubt and insecurity that kept him trapped is replaced by an unshakable certainty. God is faithful, and His justice never fails. This testimony also changes how you view your faith. While you were caught up in manipulation, you may have felt distant from God, wondering if He was really listening to your prayers. Seeing with your own eyes that He has been working all this time restores and strengthens your faith. This experience not only proves that God sees what is hidden, but also that He cares deeply for you. This moment also brings an important lesson. True victory is not just the end of manipulation, but the restoration of your identity and your spiritual confidence. The narcissist tried to distort their view of themselves, undermine their self-esteem, and erase their emotional clarity. But as you witness the unveiling of the truth, you realize that God can restore all the lost. Now that you have witnessed this divine intervention, a new journey begins. It's time to take back your voice. After being silenced for so long, it's time to reconnect with the truth about who you really are, a valuable person, loved and empowered by God. This experience ends a cycle of suffering and opens a new path to live with more emotional and spiritual freedom. But there is something even bigger. Your testimony can serve as a potent instrument to assist others who are grappling with the same silent storm you experienced. By sharing your story, you become an instrument in God's hands to bring hope to those who still can't see the way out. God has not only revealed the truth to you, He has allowed you to witness this moment so that it could be a beacon to others. His experience is living proof that manipulation is not definitive, and that when God decides to act, no lie is strong enough to resist. Now that you've seen divine intervention up close, the question that arises is unavoidable. What will be the next step? How do you move forward after living in silence and uncertainty for so long? The answer lies in something even more powerful, the healing and restoration that God has prepared for you. And that's the journey that begins now. The initial feeling is often a mixture of relief and exhaustion when the manipulation finally unravels and the truth emerges. The narcissist's downfall and the end of the manipulation cycle mark a crucial point, but they don't end the journey entirely. After so long living under emotional pressure, worn out by the lies and confusion imposed, the soul needs something essential: healing. God, by intervening to expose the manipulator, not only ends the abusive cycle, He begins a process of deep restoration that goes far beyond what the eye can see. This healing is spiritual, emotional, and psychological, and it is through it that you can finally find yourself again. Emotional manipulation slowly destroys confidence and inner clarity. Those who have experienced this type of abuse often carry invisible wounds, distorted thoughts about themselves, feelings of inadequacy, and a strong tendency to blame themselves for everything that happened. These emotional marks do not automatically disappear when the manipulator is exposed. Like scars, they persist and require careful treatment. The healing God offers begins at this very point, where words of doubt have been planted. He sows the truth. Where his identity has been destroyed, he rebuilds with love and security. The process may be slow, but it is powerful. Gradually, God restores his self-confidence, bringing back that sense of peace that had been stifled. This healing manifests itself in several ways. At times, a new perception of reality replaces old thoughts of insecurity, leaving your mind clear. In other situations, you will find that old emotional wounds no longer heal as they once did. God works not only to eliminate the pain, but also to restore what you have lost: your ability to trust, to express yourself freely, and to see yourself as someone worthy of love and respect. This process of restoration also involves rebuilding their dignity. The narcissist tried to undermine your personal value by creating the false impression that you weren't enough, that you constantly needed to mold yourself to please or avoid conflict. But God, with his steady, loving voice, whispers a different truth. You are loved, chosen, and valuable, just as you are. He doesn't just erase the lies that have been thrown at you. He replaces them with powerful statements that give back the security that has been stolen. Suffering is often God's megaphone to awaken a deaf world, as stated by C.S. Lewis. This phrase sums up well what happens after the traumatic experience with a manipulator. Suffering that seemed unbearable becomes, in God's hands, an opportunity for Him to reveal not only the truth about what happened, but also a new insight into yourself. God doesn't just reveal who you are. He awakens in you a strength you may not have known you had. This spiritual transformation is the basis for a new emotional life. As you begin to understand that you were not responsible for the manipulations and abuses you suffered, guilt gives way to freedom. The feeling of emotional emptiness begins to give way to peace. And when that peace sets in, your outlook on life changes. Not only did you survive the abuse, but you now live with renewed purpose. However, there is an even deeper aspect to divine healing, the ability to help other people. What was once your biggest wound can now become a source of comfort and hope for those who are still trapped in the manipulative cycle. The experience you have had, filled with pain and confusion, can now serve to show others that there is a path to freedom. By sharing your story, you allow others to recognize that they are not alone. Those who still live in the silence of emotional abuse can find through their testimony the hope they are looking for. His voice, once silenced by the manipulator, now has the power to bring clarity and encouragement to those who need it most. The healing God offers doesn't just heal wounds, it transforms those scars into signs of strength and overcoming. Every painful experience you have faced can be a tool in God's hands to free others who still live in the darkness of manipulation. After being healed and restored, your story can inspire those who think there's no hope. And by sharing this message, you don't just witness God's power, you become an active part of God's work in other people's lives. God didn't just expose the manipulator, He restored you so that your life, now renewed and strengthened, will be a living testimony that the truth always wins. He turns your pain into purpose and your experience into inspiration for others who are still in the cycle you broke. You have faced the silent storm of emotional manipulation, and as painful as it was, you have come this far. You've seen truth revealed, witnessed God's powerful intervention, and experienced the healing that only He can offer. But now, in the face of all this, an essential question arises. What if your story could free someone who is still trapped in the darkness of this manipulative cycle? The pain you faced was not in vain. Every silent tear, every night of anguish, and every moment of doubt can now become a powerful testimony, a message that can reach those who today experience the same suffering you have known so well. There are people who are right where you've been, confused, afraid, and believing there's no way out. Hearing their story can make a significant difference for them, determining whether they stay in the cycle of manipulation or find the strength to break free. His testimony is not just a tale of triumph, it serves as tangible evidence that God intervenes, even in the face of adversity. By sharing your stories, the lies, the wounds, and most importantly, how God has brought light through the darkness, you give hope to those who are about to give up. Your voice can be the reminder someone needs to understand that the suffering they face today will not be forever. You may still doubt the impact your experience can have. It may seem like your story is just a painful chapter in the past, something you'd rather forget. But the truth is that what you have lived has a greater purpose than you imagine. God didn't just restore your life. He prepared you to become a channel of healing for others who suffer silently. By sharing your testimony, you allow others to recognize the signs of the manipulation that you took so long to identify. You help those who live in doubt to realize that they are not alone and that there is a way out. Your story can be the answer someone is praying for, proof that God hears, sees, and acts at the right time. Don't underestimate the impact of your experience. What was once your greatest pain can become the greatest instrument of transformation in someone else's life. Some people need to hear that they can escape manipulation, heal, and find peace again. Your voice can do that. So let your testimony shine through. Share this message so others can find hope and deliverance. Someone needs to know that God can also undo the manipulation that binds him. Someone needs to hear that there is healing after so much suffering. And that person may be waiting for the words that only you can say. Thank you. See you in the next video.